Welcome everyone to the new episode of BeyondPhrenology. Today we have with us Matheus Pacheco. Matheus had been my colleague since 2016, and now he's an assistant professor at University of Porto in Portugal. And he's a very interesting career trajectory. He started with an undergrad at University of Sao Paulo in kinesiology and sports. Then he did his PhD with one of the biggest thinkers in our field, Carl Newell, at the University of Georgia. Followed by a stint at NYU as a postdoc, followed by two more stints as postdocs at University of Sao Paulo and KU Leuven, Belgium. And after that, he has been a faculty member at University of Porto in the Department of Sports Science, where he runs his motor control and learning lab, as well as he teaches motor control and learning. And I can assure that Matheus is one of the original thinkers in the field as well, partly a contrarian, and we expect a lot of innovative work to come out from Matheus' lab. Matheus, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I don't think as much as you say, but yeah, I'm a thinker.
No, I learned a lot of things with Matheus when we were together at University of Georgia and I was hanging out in your department.
Yeah, Madhur was a common presence in the kinesiology department.
Yeah. And also I can attest that you're one of the most critical thinkers in the field of motor control, which in general has which I feel, maybe you might agree, has an issue with being critical about theories.
Yeah, I would say that there are at least two types of persons here, right? There are the ones who actually always challenge stuff. I don't know, you can cite Mark Latache, Anatol Feldman, the ones who like to fight all the time, let's say. But I think the majority really are into the pragmatic idea of well, someone did that, let me just put one more variable here and see, let me change this variable, let me change this analysis here and there. So and I think it's because, well, it gives money, right? It works. You get a lot of the things done fast. You end up being known by well, you are, and they're kind of segregated, right? You have the vision guys. Well, they work with how they see their own hands, and then that's it. And then you have the gate guys, where they talk about gate and a little bit of perturbations here and there. And a total different guy works with posture, and a totally different guy works with ocular motor control. So it's kind of like a field that likes, I don't know, it seems to be more attracted to new methods and new technologies rather than criticizing everything that came before. Say, oh, let's see whether we are using appropriate methods to answer this question or not. It's much more
right.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, a lot of times with motor control, a lot of we also feel what exactly is the larger question? Because when you look at these studies with manipulating variables, and same kind of iterations. I mean, of course, there's a lot of good about motor control as well, but we are starting with our beef that you see these studies from 1970s and 60s and now, and all you see adoption of a new technology, plus some additional variables, because we can do a different kind of analysis now. Not so much the evolution of questions.
Yeah, I think the questions remain, right? You have the same questions, but I think there is in proportional terms, a decreasing number of researchers asking those questions again and again, right? So many of them actually are more concerned about increasing technology and adding variables to understand the same thing, or even just to do the new analysis that works well.
Right.
For instance, now I just left that progressive motor control in Rome, and we're discussing synergies there, and now there are way new methods to even take out synergies from motor units now. So
yes, Yeah.
So you can
Right.
extract way more stuff now because you have high dimensionality EMG systems that you can take out, like how the motor units could vary.
Right. As well as you have
And
this network analysis now into the synergy domain as well.
I do like to play with methods. The question there was actually like when I did that was to kind of have the opposite trend actually. That so I have some things with that, right? The first one was actually to see whether that would change, because there was this first question, well, this is consistent, this never changes, this is a signature of your, like, I don't know, your spine, working on this, or like your motor cortex, so controlling muscles.
So Matheus, for the viewers, like what exactly is the synergy and why is it such an important term in the realm of motor control?
Well, I think it started. It could have started before, but most researchers would start discussing from Bernstein the idea of like a group of muscles working together, right, or a group of units working together, and this was related to the problem of many degrees of freedom to control, right? So if you don't control every single unit, every single degree of freedom of your body independently, then if like it's impossible to control everything, it would be nicer if you can control groups of them. Well, that would help a lot,
Right.
because then you don't need to control everything separately.
Yeah.
And then like there is a whole thing of coming to well, synergies as a group of muscles, or synergies as a group of things acting together, like co-varying time. And more recently, so yeah, and then you have methods and methods to extract those. That's what we were discussing.
Right.
So you can extract them from motor units. You can extract them for like frequency analysis, the EMG pattern. You can extract them for activation patterns. You can even extract them in terms of kinematics. Let's say when I throw my humerus flexion and rotation occur all together. So then these 2 degrees of freedom act as a synergy.
Right.
More recently, you have like these other guys who came up with this, like more, I would say like Mark Latache, who just brings the idea that a synergy actually covaries to compensate a given thing, right? Like instead of like covaring to move something or moving together, it's something that would compensate to maintain that given variable of interest. Like could be performance, it could be any motor variable.
Which was a very good addition to the existing idea, if you think from a performance perspective.
Well, I think it's like, for me, it was quite interesting to see, like, first they developed a method, right, to find it. Before that, we had like, we would do correlations between stuff and say, well, they're correlated negatively, so probably it's compensation. What we have they've done, like Schoner and like Gregor Schoner and John Scholes, they developed this UCM method, the uncontrolled manifold method, that you could test which variable the system is trying to stabilize. So in this sense, you could see whether other joints or muscles or anything are trying to maintain a single variable stable. So you could compensate to maintain that stable. The idea is nice, especially because it was something that most of the motor control wouldn't even care, right? Like they would be much more concerned about the average of the behavior, how you get to that average. And understanding that you have this covariance to maintain something in a given situation, it was really big and it was really good, and now became something other as well. Like so, it became like
everything morphs into something.
Yeah, into like a whole new stuff.
Into an amorphous something over time.
Yeah. But I agree with you in the terms of like it became quite important because we never cared about it beforehand. Even in learning, you would say, well, he learned a movement pattern. You could even think that someone has a single thing that you would control with these given relative timing and forces and stuff that will be the same always. And when you see something that covaries to maintain something else, you think, well, then it's not something fixed. It's something that can vary and can change. And it was quite interesting. Yeah.
So what exactly, like, why are we trying to find synergies? Like, Yes, there are synergies or they are not synergies. Is a science not what they call science not settled whether there are synergies or not? I mean, we can go into whether synergies are innate, more they reflect like neurophysiological circuits, or whether they reflect some kind of learning which changes over time. You can go into that domain, but they exist or not exist. Like, what is it about synergies? Is it the ease to find synergies and show synergies that we keep up doing this work, showing synergies of different kind, and we also keep showing that it changes the context. Like where is the fascination with synergies coming from?
I think first is like there is always this issue of going deeper, right? Like, so first we saw covariation in terms of kinematics. Kinematics was simple, you could see on video. You see, you see the trunk, and like you can see the ankle and the hip covary to maintain the center of mass. Whoa, nice. Seems nice. But do you think this is the correct level of analysis? No, I think we control not the kinematics, but we control, let's say, the muscle activation. Okay, let's go deeper then.
Right.
So it's kind of like there is this trend of like always trying to go even deeper and deeper and deeper and to find the level where motor control would occur, where actually the control is. Where is the control? Well, it's in muscle, it's in motor units and so on. So what happened these last years was we started seeing more and more researchers going deeper levels to find what is constant, what would solve the issue of many degrees of freedom. In my opinion, I believe more in terms of a theory that your brain does not control muscle activation, right? Like it doesn't know what actually the muscle activation will be in the end. And I hope that's why I was invited for this conversation. But it's and in this view, the fact that you have some covariance in terms of muscle activation or kinematics or something might reflect more all these different constraints that actually make it something stable, right? Like there in the end, you have something stable that emerges from everything else, not just actually something in your
right. I mean, the anatomical constraints themselves, your hand can move only in certain ways, and muscles can activate only in certain patterns along those movements.
Yeah. Well, environmental constraints, the gravity is similar. If the task is similar, you're going to find something similar over time because, well, I hope that after I jump, the gravity doesn't change like for the next trial.
Right.
So if you do the analysis twice, you're going to find something similar.
Right.
So there are many. So that was the context actually that I went to look to synergies, because I said, well, there's something stable here.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it could be that what we find that is stable is not in kinematics, but it's like in terms of muscle synergies, let's say. Yeah. It's not because it's something that you control directly, but it became stable because of the constraints of the task. So that would be a good level of analysis to characterize the behavior that you're discussing. So that's why I went there.
Right.
You could discuss like why other people went there. Well, there are people that actually truly hold that there is this command from the motor cortex that actually is directly translatable in terms of muscles activation.
Right.
And for them it makes sense. So then study synergies. You are actually touching directly on the command, right? Like so then.
Right. But okay. So first of all, with your perspective of constraints coming into the picture, the study of synergies becomes as much the study of constraints as it is about inferring about the brain, right? Because there's a confound. It implies that you will not be able to infer about what the brain is doing because there are constraints in between, right?
Yeah, I think. Well, in my case, I never cared about the brain much.
Right.
It's part of it, right? And I think I do enjoy what neuroscientists do, like when they try to understand the brain in terms of the brain.
Right.
But when you see those guys trying to understand the brain, you see like it's quite complex for us just to say like, well, see these muscle activations is exactly what the brain is doing. Well, it might be harder.
So what do you think of the work which includes manipulendums? I won't take the names here, but people have made their careers in using manipulendums or lifting objects and just looking at the forces or just looking at the kinematics of the manipulendum and inferring a lot about the brain and the theories about the brain, how the brain controls movements. Like, is this even tenable, or is it like for a large part, it's like we make these stories and we start believing in them?
So I have a question for you. Are you talking about the task per se, or are you talking about like the whole literature that uses that?
I'm talking about this whole idea that you can actually have a task like that, okay, and you would be able to infer about what the brain is doing. I mean, of course, you can talk about control, you can talk about the constraints, you can talk about n number of things about the behavior, about the so-called optimization and things like that. But is it even tenable to go from that level to understanding, what the neurons, what is the role of the neurons, or what is the role of the circuitry, or what's the role of cognition? Is it even tenable?
Well,
or is it a leap, or is it too much of a leap?
No, there is. I think there is always like, well, it's an issue for me that. Well, if you don't agree that like brain control like actually has any responsibility over muscle activation, there is something closer. It's harder to believe that you actually have any control about positioning the end of your hand, right? Like, so, oh yeah, this is where my brain wants you to be. Like, well, you can track that visually, and that through those loops and so like get up in the place where you want. But yeah, like, so you're mixing a lot of stuff happening. And I think it's there are two issues. Like this is the first one. Like, so if you don't agree that you have direct control of like these variables that you're measuring, then it's hard to actually infer brain directly. But the second thing is like in this type of work, they usually use really constrained tasks that actually give this predictable phenomenon, right? Like, so
right. Yeah.
sensorimotor adaptation or something. And I think you might actually understand what, let's say you have some similarity, some connection with what the brain is doing in terms of that task. It might be that the brain is just doing that for that single task. Like, do you understand? Like, you might do the whole circuitry, the whole thing, but it might not be generalizable to anything else. You don't know what is a principle of neural control from what you're measuring, and just some effect of constraints again, because the brain is also like what you see in the brain is also a result of the constraints that you have in the task, or like what type of visual information you might have, the type of perception that is to working that task. So it's not I think there is always a leap, because it's well, either you're too constrained to talk about movement, or you are assuming a big jump between like what your brain does in terms of activations in areas and stuff, and actually your body moving in terms of a position.
Right.
It's yeah.
No, I personally have like there's a huge literature on motor adaptation, for instance, and with a couple of dominant paradigms. And personally, I have read them a lot, because that's what you read, when you come to the field of motor control, and that's all there is to begin with. But somehow it's not convincing. Like when you look at like last 30 years of motor adaptation, it's so out of context of any real life adaptation and so constrained. It's like we criticize psychology a lot of times, like weird, that idea of weird psychology, right? Western industrialized, educated, I think, some psychology undergrads as main subjects of psychology. So I think the motor control is also like we need to change it to motor control of manipulendum, or motor control when you're not allowed to move, or something of that sort,
We actually, so like there are two things to talk about it. It's like the first is actually Carl and I once, we never could publish that because someone invited us for an opinion, a really like a current opinion, and we wrote an opinion about motor control.
Yeah.
And then we basically discussed in that paper that we don't know whether we are discussing constraints or principles, right? Constraints or laws.
Yeah.
Because you have really, even if you don't deal with manipulation, if you take a look on the whole literature of postural control, like that's something that I work with a colleague, there's so many branches of people discussing totally different things. They don't talk to each other.
No.
And it really seems that they converge to their own paradigm, their test paradigm.
Yeah.
And they usually use, like, they compress all the data in terms of an average, right? Like you have totally different individuals.
we can have a whole podcast on the science of averages.
Yeah. And then they put everything together, and you find something that is similar between participants, or the average of each participant is similar to the average of other participant. But it's really like, it seems that they are finding out better and better what gait is about, not motor control.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, so in gait,
right.
if someone perturbs your vision in this way, you have this and that result.
Right.
Which actually talks a lot. It's good to know about gait. I'm not saying otherwise, but then you're not studying what is controlled, how you control.
You're not studying motor control, because the manipulations themselves, they're not parsimonious enough.
Yeah.
So I think one of the major things, I mean, I as a young researcher, and my temperament as well, I'm like an unsatisfied person in life. So when I read that work, a lot of times I feel like, okay, what is falsifiable here, first of all?
I'm not. Like, if you think about it, like, I'm not even concerned about something being falsifiable. My concern is whether, like, did you ever thought about it? Like, the global sense of things.
Right.
There's so many things out there, and like, did you even try to relate what you just found?
Yes.
Something else that occurred. Like, well, is it? And that kills me a little bit, because, well, then in that paper, what we were arguing is that some people get really big claims out of so small stuff that we were not discussing anything. So, and then the point was, our claim was like, so if we were born in the moon, all the tests that we've studied so far would, like, all these experiments wouldn't help nothing, because we will control our movements in a totally different way because of different gravity, and we will not know any principle of motor control because we do know only things in that specific constraint.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, how much of our motor control will actually work in International Space Station?
The point is, let me finish this part there, because then there's the other part, which kills me a little, is that when they started actually generalizing sensorimotor adaptation and calling it motor learning. Some guys say the motor learning is sensorimotor adaptation and sequence learning and the what they call de novo learning.
Right.
So you have these three things, and they say this is motor learning. But when you talk about, like, well, if a kid is trying to learn how to throw a ball, something real, anything they study does not generalize to what we are saying. But all the literature, because I think it sounds, it's way faster, it's way reproducible, like, you always find after effects, you always find this like slow approximation in terms of sensorimotor adaptation, and then everybody's like, oh, that's okay, that's the new motor learning then. No, that's not about motor learning.
So what is motor learning?
Well, we started a long time ago. So motor learning would be any relatively permanent change. Sensorimotor adaptation could be, if you really think about relatively permanent, these 10 minutes you have after, that would be relatively permanent, at least 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That would be a really small part, a really not useful part of the rest of motor learning, the rest of the whole area.
Right.
If you think that there is some sensorimotor adaptation paradigms that if you don't come back to the original situation or context you are in, the force field environment or something, you have, that could be, let's say, if that remains, then we start talking about, okay, that could be a process of something happening as we learn for real as we throw a ball or something. But really, you can study sensorimotor adaptation, but you need to study processes that take way longer. Because motor learning is relatively permanent changes that occur because of practice.
Right.
And thus, well, learning to kick a ball, like a kid that actually only uses the hip, then start using the knee, and then exploiting the all degrees of freedom of the body, that's learning.
Right, that's learning.
But the problem is, like, when you get what sensorimotor adaptation talks about, we don't even talk about joints.
No, we don't talk about anything except changes in some error. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And imagine, like, so. Yeah, so that's the whole killing the whole thing. I think there is one a researcher called Rachel Siegler. I think she works with these gravity adaptations and things like. I think she receives a lot of money from NASA, and she works with sensorimotor adaptation. I do think that she has like wonderful work and stuff in relating sensorimotor adaptation to those adaptations that occur there. But still, we're talking about these small things that occur that do not translate to anything else.
But people have made their whole careers, like, 30 to 40 years of work, and probably like tens and 20s of millions of dollars in individual labs just studying adaptation. And it's not that it's done. Even now, there are you can count the number of labs who just study adaptation lifelong.
Well, my third postdoc at KU was funded by sensorimotor adaptation.
Yeah,
I cannot lie. Right. So it's actually, it is a problem. So imagine myself, like a guy who wants to see how a kid learns to throw a ball. A kid that doesn't know how to throw and then suddenly, goes on for years and then shows the nice athletic type of throwing. I couldn't find any place that I could work with that funded. You have sports sciences departments that actually receive some money to study things, but if you can show an image of your brain there in your data, you receive at least 10 times more.
And you might not even get funded, because I have been told that you never get funded things that reviewers don't understand or they don't do themselves.
Yeah,
it's very incremental what they end up funding. Very little. It has to be 90% similar to what's been done or something, and that has been my experience. Myself applying, I've never been funded so far for anything interesting.
I think so. Currently, I have some success currently, not here in Portugal, but in Brazil, we're receiving some money. But we changed totally our strategy exactly because of this. Yeah. So even in my papers, I'm not the easier writer that you will find around. Okay, I'm people call me dense in the sense of putting too much.
You have so much of data in your papers, it's just mind-boggling.
But the problem is I also received reviews of grants and stuff that actually people were dismissive, not only because they didn't understand, but because I didn't say the terms that they like. So I remember.
Right.
I work with search, right? In terms of, I work with motor learning, and I see how people change over time.
Right.
But then, for me, that's a process of search. You explore the task space.
Right.
We can go in detail what that means, but so explore things and then you change. But then I use these words. Okay, I use these words: exploration, search. And the guy came with all these supervised learning, unsupervised learning things, and blah, blah, blah. Things are really computational.
So let's talk about it. So what is supervised and unsupervised learning, and who exactly is the supervising and not supervising agent there?
Well, supervised, you have it's really about data classification, right? Data categorization and stuff.
Yeah.
A system that learns to categorize stuff.
Yeah, but is it relevant to
supervised stuff? The supervised learning is truly someone shows you what is right and what is wrong, and then you get what is the data related to each one of them, and then you learn to classify it. Okay, it's quite good for, I don't know, to making clusters. I want you to know
Was this reviewer talking about supervised and unsupervised learning in the context of motor control?
In motor control. Actually, there are many guys who believe that that's how we learn.
So who is the supervisor there? Like something sitting in the brain?
Oh, no. Then it could be anything. It could be social environment giving you, yes, good, bad, feedback from the task.
Oh.
But yeah, you receive examples of stuff. You do a movement, and then you have like, ta-da! Yeah, it's a reward. So then you know that this is related to something. And then you have something else that goes, well, you didn't do correctly. And then
but do they understand the idea? Like you go to a bowling alley and you actually throw a ball and you hit the 9 pins, in one go, right? That's like a good thumbs up, right? But that doesn't mean that it has been supervised and you'll be able to repeat that movement. Here we go.
My issue there was that in the point in the grant was even to say there was supervisor or unsupervised or anything. I was truly asking, how do we change? It could be, you could say, well, that's a type of supervised learning, or this is a type of unsupervised learning, or something. But I was just saying, like, okay, you receive an error, you change. You receive another error, like not even error, you receive a feedback of what you've done, because sometimes you don't have an error, right? Like
right.
If I'm throwing as far as I can, you know how far you threw, like you don't know whether that's right or wrong, it's just like a distance,
right? And
then you keep doing the type of things, you see variation, and then you kind of like perceive what happens in terms of you and the task. And the issue was like, this guy completely threw it out, like saying, but basically because he said, yeah, that's true, like supervised learning, of course, blah 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 blah. I'm not talking about like how an algorithm works. I actually want to see behavioral data to see, well, it could be that it works like an algorithm. I'm happy if that's the end of my career, right? Like, well, it's solved. But nobody showed that. But the point was like, I was using the wrong words because I needed to use the terms that this guy was using. So you were talking about grants. So like what I've done to change that was to go fully in terms of like movements change. And that's it. But then I had to go to a totally different area. Like, so motor control motor control and motor learning acts in many areas. Rehab, like theoretical questions you can discuss and stuff, biomechanics, blah, blah, blah. And I had to go to physical education fully to receive some money. But then I had to discuss in terms of like, well, if we analyze the movement of the person, it might be easier to help them improve and for them to participate in more physical activity. And I received some money, but like that's really not what you want to do. Right?
What is interesting is that in this line, so for instance, you're talking in the context of sports or learning. The similar problem happens in the context, for instance, stroke patients. Like somebody has stroke and now the person is disabled in some ways and now need to probably compensate or relearn things, right? Now, if you think about the source of funding, the source of funding is all about stroke, okay? Like one of the programs at NIH, for instance, right? And when you look at what exactly is funded, it's every time sensorimotor adaptation.
Yes.
Right? And the idea, and there's this idea that somehow adaptation is what we want, is what will solve the problem of stroke, or is the key to rehabilitating a stroke patient. Adaptation. Where does it come from? I mean, it seems to be the most dominant kind of a biblical idea, and rarely you see someone talking without that baggage.
No, like it could come from like the same source we said right now. Like, well, it's a pragmatic thing, right? Like, let me have something that I know what should be the effects. So I know that there is like this fast like perturbation, then you return, then after effect. Well, if stroke patients are different from non-stroke patients, well, we found something about the cerebellum. It's kind of things like this. I think it's really like pragmatic in terms of like going to some things that you already know how to discuss. But this also fits with what you said in terms of how you like, if you need to convince the grant reviewer that you're able to do it, it's way simpler to say, I know exactly how the experiment will work. right?
Right.
Rather than
It's
being
so
like
fun. It's so
me.
interesting. Yeah.
If you're like me, you're gonna say, "Well, I have no idea what will happen." That's why I'm asking the money.
So basically, we have a system now in general which says that do only what you know, or do only like by whatever with your pilot data, that it will work, right?
Yeah,
Nothing should fail, basically.
yeah. Like well, this year I'll try to apply to something that they have this. What is the name? High risk, kind of like profile. I don't know how high risk these guys are.
It generally isn't.
So yeah, so like, but it's challenging in the sense that like, oh, I should know exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
And because of this, we don't grow. Like, well, I don't see many experiments showing this. I don't know, a month of practicing model learning to actually see large changes. Either you use like a really established paradigm, and then you can publish a lot, and people will know you for this, or you're lost, right? Like you're trying to find something.
But you have published a lot. Like you haven't. It's not that you don't publish, right? And you have not published like simple stuff as well as like simple analysis of variance all the time.
No. Yeah, like I've tried to go that route.
Yeah.
No, I still try. Like, well, I was lucky, right? Okay, let's be totally honest here. I'm not smart. I'm just lucky, and I've been quite annoying, and that's why you like me, and that's good.
Yeah.
So jokes aside, well, first I believe I was lucky because it's easier for me to be disruptive, to say some things that nobody believes when you have Carl Newell like in the end of the list of authors, right? It's way easier. That's the first thing. The second thing is because I was kind of like discovering things in terms of methods and so on, I had to. People got interested in the methods, and I used to do like also like the third point was like I used to do not consciously, but I used to do something that was kind of smart. I would ask a question everybody wants to know. Okay.
Yeah.
So a question as simple as, do people change proportionally to error? Simple.
Right. It's a very, at least the question is very digestible.
Yeah.
Definitely your answers are not to them. I know that.
Yeah, but that was my thing. I knew beforehand that nobody corrects proportionally.
Right.
I was aware of that.
Yeah.
But then I said, well, if I frame in terms of these things that actually would reach everybody, I then can show like an extra analysis why people do not fit like a proportional change to error.
Right.
And then I was lucky to get it here and there because of like both Carl and both like you could, if you change the framing, it's people are more like approachable. But well, I had like numerous like failures in terms of journals to go. I remember having like 4 or 5 reviews rounds with the Journal of Experimental Psychology. And in the end, after like 4 or 5 reviews, the editor said, well, nobody understands what you're doing. And I was like, whoa, thank you. And it was, and it actually was the same paper that I've published as the question of, do we correct proportion?
But why do you think that's a case, that's a problem in biology? Because if a physicist, for instance, publishes something, right? Most of the time in physics, especially the landmark works, right? Nobody understood the theory of relativity when it was published, like, or even Brownian motion, or photoelectric effect, or Maxwell's equations, or Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Everything was very counterintuitive at that point, right? But in biology in general, at least in this more like psych and biomechanics oriented field, like if nobody understands that, you just don't want to publish. Like, how do you know, first of all, nobody would understand that?
Well, so like in prediction, like I always, I don't know, like when I started, I thought I was saying something so basic that people would understand anyway.
Right.
Like I would put together everything I read and I would say, well, it cannot be that people in the same conditions learn the same thing. but like, so, and I would cite other guys, and it was kind of, for me, was obvious. I was just showing the obvious.
Yeah.
But it came out as nobody understood that right away, and still nobody cares. Like, I mean, nobody cares. I'm being like over the
Right. Of
percentage,
course. Of course.
but it's but nobody actually like uses that too much. Like in terms of predicting what people know, it's quite challenging. What they will understand or not, but well, and there is a totally different period of time, right? Like you were talking about physics and like landmark changes and like big stuff, milestones. But I think it's a different time where we are. And well, we are not in physics, and which creates kind of like, well, we are in a time where like publications counting works in a different way. Reviewers work in a different way. Well, I remember, I don't know if it's true, but I remember that Einstein once got really pissed off that one journal sent his work for a reviewer because that was not a common thing. So I don't know, like it's really like, I think the system is a little bit broken in terms of like being disruptive or being or changing.
Yeah, it's funny when we have, see, at that time there were only few journals, right? Now there's no shortage of journals, and with publications being online, there's no shortage of space. You can actually have a paper which is 50 pages long with like 35 figures, like each and everything you can show. You can publish like a smaller version for people who don't want to read in details, but you can also have space to express yourself, right? And sometimes you really want to express yourself. If you really want to derive things, you really want to show you want to discuss each and every aspect of your things. So it's kind of a pity that it's not promoted these days, even though we have all the resources for that.
Yeah, I think to some degree I was trained wrongly, because Carl would make us read like Woodworth.
Yeah.
Would make us read like Fullerton and Cattell, like 1892 kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, and you have a full thesis of one topic, and they would say everything about everything.
Yeah.
So like, no, there are these guys who say that like force variation relates to force magnitude in this way, and they would be like really like thorough to test all possible things.
All possible, yeah.
To show, see, this works, this doesn't work, we think this way. And the funny thing, I remember reading one of the first, I think the first paper, second or third paper about I think the algorithm, that this guy was trying to show, I think Adrian, I think that's his name, as far as I remember. He was trying to show that the idea of the algorithm was wrong. But the nice thing was like, he described even the experiments that went wrong. He said like, well, we tried this, but then we find out something wrong in the equipment, blah, blah, blah. And that was nice, because then if you read that work, you would be 5 years ahead in trying things by yourself.
Yes.
Right? Because, well, he tried that thing, it didn't work, so that's how we should do it. And in the end, he was wrong. Like he said, well, we tried all the ways to show the algorithm is wrong in the brain, but it seems that it does exist.
Yeah.
So which is quite nice, right? Like, so go through it, and you're not scared of saying like, well, in the end, yeah, it seems the guy's right, because it wouldn't kill your career to be wrong.
Yeah, so that's another thing, like, what if I discover that I made a mistake in like some of the articles I published, right? Or what if I have a reinterpretation, or I want to change my interpretation, like I want to discard what I believed 5 years back, right? It's a taboo right now to do that. Like, I don't know many people who do that, right?
No, well, actually, this is a problem that I think it goes way longer than what we think, because Carl was actually not a dynamical systems guy when he started.
Yeah.
Right. He was information processing.
A lot of older dynamical systems people were actually trained in bioinformatics. Sorry, not bioinformatics, but cybernetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point for Carl was like, I asked him like, how did he decide to change?
Yeah.
And he told me, I waited until I got my tenure.
Oh.
So imagine having this situation where where like, so he, like, I don't know when Carl started, like, well, 74, 70 something.
Yeah.
At that time, you already had that pressure that you cannot be seen as a lost guy or a guy going somewhere that you don't know. So yeah, the pressure is way higher now, like where if people think that I stop publishing, they will fire me, right? It's
Yeah. Right.
but I think we miss that, and I understand it. Sometimes I don't have much to say. I should be fast. Well, we tried this, it didn't work. That's it, guys. But yeah, like I'm in a position where you don't need to publish anything. You just give reports of your lab every year. So this year we've done this, and that. We found this. We had problems here, and that, and then you show it like online reports of Matthew's lab. And then people will be like, well, Matheus is a guy who works in interesting stuff. Let's see what he has done this year.
Yeah.
Good. That will be over. Fine.
Right.
In this year, about next year, I tried to get some money. I spent the whole year trying to get money. I didn't. So yeah, guys, no news. Good.
Yeah, you can have you can like as much as I like publishing, and I do, I completely agree with you. I mean, I myself have this thing. I was frustrated 2 days back, and I was bitching to my friend that I don't know whether there will be any hope for Parkinson's, because the way the funding works, the funding cycles work, the pressure on you to apply for like these smaller grants, and it takes up your soul, and the idea of publishing these chunks and pieces in general, will it really lead to understanding the way we need to understand that disease? So I'm on the side of things like, when we wanted to make the US, the atomic bomb, like they put a bunch of people together in like a place for 5 years, like you need to solve this problem, right? And we need that kind of a drive. Like no questions asked, we'll give you just 5 years, this much of funding, just play around, have Parkinson's patients, do this, do that, right? You don't need like an extended IRB proposal for everything you do. So basically, there's a lag phase of 3 to 4 months before you are able to test anything, right? That reduces how much you can actually do in 5 years, and with so much of administrative overhead. Where exactly are we understanding the disease? How exactly are we trying to tackle it?
Yeah, I think this is even a bigger problem for like the areas of motor learning and motor development, because we don't have time. Like, as I said, I cannot track a kid for a year to see how this kid changed in terms of kicking a ball.
Right.
The best works we have so far in terms of motor development comes from, I think, the time where people could just follow twins for like 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And that would be okay. Yeah, what you're doing, I'm following twins.
Definitely, in terms of developmental motor control, most of our work is decades old. Most of the insights we have are decades old. You don't have like breakthrough insights after that.
Like I think we've changed to like, so now you have synergies in motor development as well.
Yeah.
You have there are guys actually getting the activation of like muscles in newborns and seeing like whether kicking and other things relate to the walking synergies and stuff like this.
Yeah.
But you see that is it's not a breakthrough, as you said. Like we don't understand motor development better. I think
it's just a reuse of a new technique and new way to look at the same questions.
Yeah, and it's mainly because, well, it's again, that's why people went to sensorimotor adaptation. You know what will happen. The kid will learn to walk.
Yeah.
You just need to put new devices on him and find it out when it happens and what changed there.
You know what's interesting is I was looking at yesterday Parkinson's. So when you look at postural control in Parkinson's patients, they show a kind of a more rapid trajectory, higher acceleration profiles, and more disruptive, center of pressure planar trajectory. Now, when you give them L-DOPA, the trajectory actually is completely different. The posture is more stable, but the trajectory is all over the place. Then you give them DBS, deep brain stimulator, the trajectory basically compresses. Now, both are helping Parkinson's. Both are leveling off the symptoms, but they're doing it in different ways. In one case, your COP trajectory like expands. In one case, the COP trajectory shrinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which does not fit with a single idea of how the center of posture is controlled, with existing model. there's a lot there's a lot to unfold there, for instance.
Yeah, I think, well, again, we come back like to the point of what motor control is doing is like,
yeah,
people don't care. Like, so it's really like they stay with one thing and it's like they stay forever, and that's fine. Even postural control, like analysis. I remember having this participating as an undergrad, like in this meeting with Bardi, Marcos Duarte, like all like nice guys. And he said, "Well, you never stand quietly.
no,
Why do we do studies like this all the time?
yeah, right.
You never stay that way."
It's so interesting. When I search for extending standing, I was interested in how to see what happens when you stand for a long time. So a lot of jobs, for example, hospitality, whether you're a barista or you're a nurse, or for instance, you're a soldier, patrolling, you stand for like hours and hours at a time, right? And when you look at the motor control literature on extended standing, 2-minute standing trial is called an extended standing trial.
Yeah.
So I'm right now writing multiple IRBs, and trying to get funding to study these long stretches of standing, like 6 hours, 5 hours, right? And see what happens, how things change, how long actually can you stand on one leg? Okay, how does the whole control changes over time? It's hard to decipher about the strategies, but what happens to your central pressure, right? What happens to your different parts of the body? How they coordinate differently. But what's funny is that the literature extended standing is called 2 minutes. When do we stand just for 2 minutes? Like, there's a lot of time I'm just standing for hours.
Yeah. No, that's true. It's totally true. Yeah, no, I think there is like a bigger issue that we are discussing here, and it takes into account like how science is done currently and how people care too much about their own profiles and things. And I'm not like I'm guilty as well. Like, so sometimes I get concerned that I'm not publishing enough. And well, my students should get scholarships. I need them to publish with me, and so they can get stuff. But there is a bigger issue here that you're not allowed to just stop by and say like, well, you know what? Let's truly see what is happening here. And let's take our time. Like, we won't have the correct measures right away. I don't know what are the best measures to get, like what is postural control. Let's try again. Let's go on.
Posture control has been such an enigma, right? Like, I myself do a lot of posture studies, and it's an enigma. I mean, if you think about it, how much we have tried to understand it in good faith, right? It's such a complex problem.
It is.
And when you look at these studies, like lifting things and moving things while you're sitting, the whole postural component missing, because posture changes everything, upside down. When you're standing and you're controlling, the task is very different, and the difficulty is very different compared to when you are sitting and doing the same things.
Yeah, I think, like, well, for me, posture is kind of like a nice model of things, but when you study properly, like, well, lifting things, moving, and so on. Because, like, well, one of the best experiments, I think, that showed like this interconnectedness in all things in terms of motor control comes from Corder and Ashner 1982, right? Like, when they kind of like perturbed it randomly, and you would see really too fast to be pre-programmed kind of responses in the leg while you're doing something else.
Ultra fast responses.
Yeah, and it was like, and that's nice about posture, like the whole thing that you do to maintain the task while not falling, right? Like, and the nice thing that I think it's like, that's why I like sports sciences, when you allow yourself to fall because you're completing the task that way. Because it's some interesting thing. So that's, for me, it's posture. Like, is how you actually manage.
So you're even
to
utilizing
your body to maintain the task.
Yeah. So even falls. So fall becomes like part of the performance then.
Fall is like, I want to not maintain this given posture because this will allow me to complete the task.
Right.
And that's a really nice thing, because that should be different when you fall and you don't want to fall, right?
Right. And you're controlling every aspect of the fall, because you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to have the trajectory in a certain way. And you're working against you you're basically utilizing gravity as well, rather than working against it. So that equation also changes.
Yeah, no, but this is the thing that I like about posture. Not well, do you shake a little bit more when you see the target? Well, yeah, fine, nice. But it's quite interesting, especially because like when you think about like any kind of like a jump or anything that for instance a volleyball player needs to do to save the ball that will like touch the ground.
Yeah.
So they do it on purpose to fall in a way that's controlled and nice, but everything's still compensating the same way as that you would do if you're standing. So like, well, the idea of like how you control posture should not be in terms of maintaining yourself standing.
Right.
Should be maintaining the course of action, right? Like posture will be the kind of this basis for action. But people like to stand and see like how people stand. So that's
so you're saying that we need motor control of extreme events in a way, or extreme performance.
It doesn't need to be extreme. Like actually could be
ecological.
Common stuff that you do. Like, and it's because it is this fact of like, so when someone bumps me when I'm playing soccer, I avoid falling because I want to maintain like running.
Yeah.
But when I want to pretend that I was hit, to pretend that I received a fault,
right,
I fall.
Yeah.
Right. Like so it's, but like if someone tries to stop me from falling, I try to keep falling. Like so it's kind of like my posture is attempting to move there. Like so you need that kind of a thing, like more actually what we are trying, what is common to all these things, not get one type of posture in one given constraint and see whether that can be reproducible.
Right.
Like so and that's what we discussed about like motor control is like, well, people like to do that, they love to do that, they find like a given task that works well for them, and they just go like say, well, we're gonna do this forever now, and this will be my task. And then they switch lights, they put something in vibration in your legs to see whether you lose perception and all these things. But yeah.
So Matheus, what would happen? Like, do you think? I think we should try this experiment, right? Start like 2 journals at the same time of very similar capabilities and scope, and have a peer review process in one and not in the other. Do you think removing peer review might reduce the quality in some instances? Because I like for me, yes, peer reviews have improved my manuscripts right over the time. Definitely, a lot of them have gained, though the process is frustrating sometimes. Do you think if we remove peer review a little bit or reduce peer review, do you think it might help turning things more innovative, or given that the times have changed now, people will just keep sending more junk that they know that there's no peer review?
So there is one guy, I don't remember his name, but there is this stores like I don't think stores is there is like this kinesiology thing that actually works for like open science and so on. It's really nice. And he have this conference. There is this guy who will say that actually rejecting a bad paper does not make that paper from being published. Does not keep
it does not keep any manuscript which is written will get published.
Yeah, it will be published.
I think it's a law of science. It's a law of modern science. Things that once you're just get it done. Yeah.
But that's so like I don't think the issue is only peer review, because
I see. Yeah.
I think the issue is truly like what we need to do to get published, how people now see peer review. Because if I didn't have any peer review in everything that I write, I know that people will criticize what I do because I wrote it in a bad way or so on. I would spend much more time like just sitting and trying and working with others to improve that manuscript in a way that would be like relatable, people would understand, and we could do. Okay. But then they have the pressure of I need to publish a lot. Then I spend a lot of time trying to publish and blah, blah, blah. This takes time from the peer review I need to do for others. So it gets like a whole bunch of mess, such as like, as if I am the peer review, I want to find easy ways to get out of reviewing, right? So I just look for errors. I just look for things that are like, yeah, this is bad, you don't cite the right papers, but I want to reject you. So I'm not improving the paper much. I want to help a little, like I do see here, but I'm tired because I'm doing so many other stuff. So I'm trying to publish a lot. At the same time, it takes time for my peer review, and then my peer review will be bad anyway. My papers are bad anyway, that needs peer review to be improved, and so on. I think the whole issue is with the metrics of like how I need to stay in science. If I don't have many things to do, peer review would be, actually Carl used to say this, that peer review was a good way for you to update yourself. Because if there are only good papers being submitted, people who actually had time to think about it and so on and write it, what you have in the end is a good paper that will even inform you. You're going to say, wow, that's really good. I didn't know this, and blah, blah, blah. Nice, right? So peer review would be your reading. You'll be helping the society.
And you would be more than willing to actually review a paper.
Yes. But because I don't need to keep running to publish the second paper tomorrow, or to do something to do like a rebuttal of this paper.
Oh, even paper, like even when you written the paper, no matter how good you have written, the whole submission process, the filling in the submission form, it's getting easy with some journals, is another nightmare. When you face rejections, when you re-upload it, if you just calculate the time, one study actually they calculated like some hundreds of millions of dollars of researchers' time just goes into uploading the manuscript because the inefficient process.
It's actually makes no sense whatsoever. Like, just write the damn paper, like just give me the title, the authors, like just send a word, right? Like this is the word.
Just send a PDF because it has all the information, and later on once it is accepted, we can fill up all the forms.
Yeah, that would be nicer. I think the issue is like, so the whole system is not about, the problem is not peer review. Like the problem is the system, how it measures you, like how gives you
so
like
it's a performance appraisal. It's a performance appraisal of a scientist. Then
it became then the journals get money from it because now open science, payable open science, people like it, so they get rich, and so
I mean, to be honest, journals are basically exploiting, or publication houses are exploiting how we rate each other as researchers.
It became a market, like, and that's actually where things are going.
So where does it go? Because I think I don't know how many people know, academicians, especially the ones who are thriving, are working at their top capacity. I don't think they can take any more work. Their families are suffering. I mean, if you look at the work-life balance, I don't think there's anything like work-life balance, but if you think like in terms of like how much effort our average academician puts into science, into teaching, into administration, they're always working. They're just at the level of breakdown most of the time. So where does it go further?
Well, there are two ways. Usually in the past, you would have those guys who would say, well, only the strongest survive, which was a bullshit, right? Like, it was like the only ones who actually, with a lot of money to hire other people to do their job, would survive. And I think currently it is sometimes some kind of like that, because, well, if you have money, you will be funded, you're going to have students who will work, right? Like they will publish your things and their things, and you will have like
the postdoc pyramid scheme.
But it's happening there. It's like, so you have those who actually get the money, and the other ones who actually need to they need to just understand that they won't thrive in research, right? Like they're like, yeah, I'm the kind of guy who will publish here and there. I won't be called for conferences because I'm not getting much funding. Yeah, that's it. So, and sometimes you need to choose, right? Like, well, do I want to see my wife sometimes? Well, then probably I won't publish this much, right? Yeah, like even like for us, like early career researchers, I used to joke around that in soccer, you cross the ball, but then you run to make the header because you need to do everything by yourself. I don't have many students to just like play around and have them like collect the data for me. So I need to be there every data collection, and also need to be there teaching. So it's a game, right? Like, so if at any point, like let's say next year I get like a really huge grant, then the whole thing changes. Then that bifurcation where I go nicely to the rich lives, the rich academician life that you just stays rich forever.
Right.
But that's it.
It's a feedback cycle, like what's interesting is that I don't think that grant should be part of your CV, and grant, like your previous grant, I don't think that should be part of any assessment, because that is basically just fueling, why, if I write a project to you, let's say, right, and you are evaluating me, how good is the project, right? Why do you care whether I had a grant in the past or not, or which grants, right? So what's end up is happening, oh, this person has got a grant, so let's give him more grant. That's how it works.
It is.
So we are selecting people for grant writing. We are not selecting people for research. That's for sure.
No, no way. Here in Portugal, it's quite that way. Like you have it. Like if you don't have a track record in that subject that you want to study, they won't give you any money. That's almost written. Right. Even there is like a really big cancer facility here that this guy got all the money from European Union, but the Portuguese wouldn't give him like $1 because when he started, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you need to show that you already have a cancer institute to have another one.
Right.
That's the idea. But
right.
That's how it is.
So where are we back to motor control? Where are we in motor control? Like, how do you see motor control as a field? Like, what are some of the questions you think there are, and where do you think the breakthroughs will come?
Well, I think we are able now to understand more levels of analysis in terms of like how they work together. There is this really nice, I think I like this dynamic neural theory, dynamic field theory from Gregor Schoner and colleagues, where they try to put together many levels and so on. Obviously, they need to simplify here and there and assume stuff, but it's nice. It's based also. They use the idea from referent control, where you don't control directly any muscle activation or any positions or anything, any forces. All things emerges from like interactions, environment and body. And so there is this, right? Like there's this whole bunch of things in motor control where this nice thing occurring. There will always be the guys that deal with the methods and the guys that keep working in computational terms, which, well, it's fancy, and you can say that your forward motor is in your cerebellum.
Yeah. But whether is it there in your cerebellum?
Well, it could be. I never opened mine to see, but like it could be there. But okay. And I think what kills me, like, and what is still like a really large disconnection, is that we don't know much about learning. We don't know much about like process of change. So imagine the following: you have so like the HKB. People love the HKB, right? You have the HKB that predicts where you can do like in phase, anti-phase, and transitions between it. There, like, if you ask anyone, like, say, okay, how does that equation changes with learning? People will just put extra sine waves to the model, like to actually have extra attractors there. But there is nothing in terms of like, okay, what is changing for you to have these things there? How can we do it in a not an ad hoc way, like where we just add wherever we want? There's in like, so I talked about the HKB now, but this is a really like 1 degree of freedom task. You just need to maintain, it's 2 degrees of freedom, but it's relative phase based. So like this variable is the most important.
Right. It's a paradigm. It's a paradigm rather than a theory, I would say. Yeah.
It's hard for me to actually translate that to anything else. Like, as I said, for a kid learning to how to kick or to throw a ball, because you don't see those nice variability increase and then decrease, or anything. Because, well, first, those things that we said about like the HKB and so on, you need to remember always now, right? The thing they said to participants: if you feel that you're about to change, don't act against it.
Yeah, but in the
You
natural course, you
always acting,
always act against it. Yeah.
yeah, you always need to, you're always trying to compensate.
Yeah.
So we've been, for instance, so in motor development, you have this growth spurt, right? Like where you start growing a lot.
Right. Yeah.
In that, like imagine you have a body and suddenly your body like grows a lot.
Right.
That should be a really nice change in how you control your body.
And you know what's interesting is that I'm working on some allometric, a paper related to allometric scaling and growth process modeling. Those different parts of the body, they don't scale similarly. They scale in a very different non-linear fashion.
Yeah.
So even if you have like a so-called forward model, that with the time scale of development, it would be like fooled in multiple ways, not just one.
Yeah. No, actually, like that was the argument in 1982 with Kugler, right? Like they said, like Kugler, Kelso, and Turvey showed that, well, if you have something that needs to actually act in terms of feedback to correct it,
right,
you need to throw it out because basically your body is different. You hold the forces you need to control are different.
I mean, I go up to gym and come back, right, with like a 2-hour workout. I've lost a few hundred grams. I mean, I take a poo, right? And my center of mass changes. Right? If you think about it, do I recompute my center of mass where it is?
Yeah, like
a fundamental
actually,
question.
And that's where learning and development for me are actually the best phenomena to actually argue against any kind of like central control.
Right.
Because central control cannot deal with those changes, those weird changes that we do.
No.
But the point, coming back, is like, so imagine you're growing up, but the kid who is practicing something is not allowing it in himself or herself to vary. No, he wants to be good at the test that he's performing. So he's actively trying to compensate all this variation that he's actually facing. So you don't see that nice explosion in variability and come back like in a stable thing that you find. It's totally a new thing. And that's where the separation starts. And that's, I think, where motor control needs to improve, not only because I want people to work in terms of motor learning and development, but to understand actually the first question we discussed about like constraints and laws. Because if there is something that's constant over all change that the person shows, it could be a principle of control.
Yeah.
The thing that you see in the end, it's because of the constraints. I learned to deal with the constraints of the task.
Right.
But if if you have something different over time, like, so if I don't know, like I used to play with my students, like, so the question is, do you change your control in learning?
Yeah.
Do you have a single way of control that learns? And then you can also play with those questions in terms of development. Do you change the way you learn as you develop? Do you change the way you control as you develop? So like the laws of control are age dependent, kind of a thing.
Right. No, very interesting question. Like,
we never play with that.
Yes, we never play with that. Yeah.
Obviously, it would be nicer if everything was static, right? But
right. So there's a lot of scope for very clever experimental designs here.
There are, but you need really longitudinal studies.
Longitudinal, yeah.
We like carved hypothesis or theory-driven hypothesis, right? Not just I'm gonna measure the synergies when they're 5 and when they're 10.
Yeah, I keep getting papers for review, right? You know, like we measured synergies in this task before and after. Okay.
Yeah, it's a thing. Like so I think there is like a lot of things to do. There are many things that we can do, and well, it's lovely. Like the whole world of motor learning. Actually, when I finished my PhD, I was really excited. I said, nobody works in this thing that I work, so I have many stuff I can do for the rest of my life.
That's actually true.
Right? Like you just say, whoa, nice! I have a whole career in front of me. But then you learn all the difficulties of like trying something new, or like, oh yeah, let me do an experiment for 5 years. People say, I don't think we want to fund that. Right? So it's all like this, like, and I think the current challenges we have in motor learning and development is actually finding ways to go around it, right? Like how can I do like an experiment of a whole semester? I'm trying to learn here, but as a professor, that's the good thing. You can ask your undergrads as a part of a given class
yeah,
to participate in an experiment, just to actually for them to understand things that is happening, but they also like your participants. You cannot force them to do that or anything, but if they are willing to do, but that's the good thing. You have a one semester with them.
right.
So you can ask them to do like a few trials every class.
Right.
That was Carl's idea, actually. He said that we should have all classes in kinesiology, at least one class that would be a whole experiment for a year. But yeah, you start getting creative about like how can you actually do those things. But still, motor control, learning and development are quite separated because of money and how you get all the funding and in pragmatism, right? Like it's easier if you in motor control just study postural control for the rest of your life, just doing one small thing. If in motor learning you start doing sensorimotor adaptation because it's a single day kind of task, and you can see the brain, you can see the spine, you can do stuff.
I am the sensorimotor adaptation guy, and I'm the best manipulator of the manipulando.
And in motor development, actually, the guys who actually work with the whole infancy and so on, they are now moving to this quest about physical activity.
Right.
Not much concern about like how are the changes that occur in motor control, like in terms of movement patterns and coordination, but really like about this gross kind of like measures to relate them to physical activity. So we're getting like even more segregation between the areas. And not even, no, in my opinion, sorry, who is listening to this, but in my opinion, it's like none of them are answering any question. Like you have like few guys who are interested in the big questions, but the rest is just like doing it over and over.
I mean, it might sound a little arrogant, but I've been to some conferences and meetings, and if you actually look at the kind of questions people answer these days, is just like, the way I look at things is like being an assistant professor or or being an academic, right? A tenure track faculty is a privilege in a lot of ways, in the sense that you can work when you want, how much you want, right? And on what you want, right? So basically, while others in the world are struggling and there are bosses on their head, and work pressure and things like that. Yeah, we work our asses off, but at the same time, we can do what we like. So we have been given this ultimate freedom to tackle those big questions, right? And that's the idea. That was the initial idea of tenure, for instance, more than political free speech. It was also about the freedom to tackle big questions, which others do not have the mind space to tackle, right? So it can be part of my mission, given that, if you know that you will get tenure, like, you can think about a 15-year project. Yeah, you might not get funding, but at least in terms of answering the question, you can think of a larger theory or larger vision. And when you see this like petty ideas, right, and ideas which are not even challenging anything, so what the hell am I doing with this privilege, and what the hell are you doing with your privilege?
Yeah, you need to be really humble to do that thing that you just said, right? Like, because you're gonna need to be hearing for at least, let's say you said 15 years project.
Yeah.
You can also obviously publish some things here and there, but you won't be publishing much because you are really deeply connected to that big project, right?
No, but you can actually think about a 15-year vision. You can still have smaller studies which built for that vision. You can still have part data sets. You can still have early analysis or more progressive analysis. It's doable if you have a longer vision.
Yeah, no,
at least the question should be big enough, At least the question should be challenging enough. If I already know, like, oh, I have this machine. A lot of times, like, how much do we know? People like, oh, this person is a TMS person. This person is like fMRI person. Like, that itself is an acknowledgement that this methodology is enough to answer this question. Is that true? You know what I mean? If you have a question, it's like, oh, here's the question. I will use whatever it is required in the world, whatever technology and whatever the analysis and whatever the experiments to answer this question.
I think it's as we said, it's a pragmatic view, because so let me use this method that I know,
Yeah, it's
and then I
pragmatic.
can finish many stuff. Yeah, I think in the end it's always like that.
It's definitely sociologically adaptable.
Yeah, no, I think someone should study motor control researchers.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we have paid the price, I mean, we will agree, right? We have paid the price of not following that particular mode of science.
Yeah, well, we were lucky, right? Like, so you are in a good university, I am in a good university.
No, we made it, but I think we compensated it with being productive. Like, had we been, let's say, about the same ideas, and it did not work out for us, let's say, or we did not have the support of the big people we had, right? Like, you were with Carl, I was with Carl partly, and with Dorothy Fergesi. So you are also with people who were very accomplished and who helped us navigate the landscape, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I think, no, yeah, that's definitely true. I know, actually, even for the guys who were trained for, like, in terms of big figures, there's some who actually never found, right? Like, they were never hired. They
Yeah.
are still moving through the landscape of postdocs.
Right.
But yeah, we paid the price. I do agree with you. It's like we could have been more successful, have more students, more like support, and
Right.
if we had been like more.
If we would have towed the party line, followed one paradigm, and cited those, I think every paradigm has like 2 or 3 big shots, right? And so you follow that paradigm, cite those big shots, frame your grant in terms of that particular paradigm. I think that's definitely a recipe for it's like making cappuccino.
yeah. That's the good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not much like a problem. Like, I don't see this as a problem anymore. I want to
No.
relax, but
Right.
as we were saying before, like, we need to work a little bit more than the others too.
Right.
I think so.
I think work compensates for those kind of stuff. Like, for instance, I have been here for almost 10 months as a faculty now. This is my 10th month, but I haven't. I don't have a PH20 yet, because 2 reasons. Like, my work is a little complex, as well as I cannot take someone. I cannot. Uh, I mean, I want somebody who is interested in science and not just wants to do a PhD. So plus I use a lot of different things to do this kind of work. So that's making me a little more selective and a little more. It's putting a little bit of challenge, even though I have funding for 2 students right now.
No, yeah, it's tough. Like, I have some master students here and there. Like, so I have some master students in Brazil, one master student here. But I've been less selective, much because of. I think, like, I'm not a good guy to, like, I think I'm an approachable guy, but I always have my moments. So, like, if the kids have their moments as well, like, I don't care.
No, that's fine. Like, for me, I've always been surrounded by passionate people, passionate in science. And I think, I used to hang out with you and your group, and Carl's group, in kinesiology, which was pretty passionate in general. And same with my colleagues, right? So I really want, I mean, a PhD student is like a PhD lasts more than average marriage, if you think about it, right? So you really want to have a person who is passionate about what they're doing, about science, or about things. It's really hard to deal with someone who is interested in, like, publishing 4 papers and just get out of it. At some point you get pragmatic about it. Yeah, it's fine, but you really want somebody to think about things, and you want to train a scientist. You don't want to train a clerical staff.
Yeah, no, I've been seeing, like, especially like in Europe, there's like this trend of like going outside of academia, right? Like, so yeah, you train your PhD to go somewhere else.
Right.
And I've been seeing way more of this position of like, well, the PhD is just a degree for me to get this better job.
Yeah.
obviously there are different attitudes toward this. I totally support going like outside of academia, but I think sometimes because of this goal, some people actually are not as passionate as you said, right?
Yeah.
Like they are not happy when they see like, wow, the kid actually does the thing that I saw it, or well, something like this, right? Like I always loved going to the lab and looking at the subjects doing stuff and trying to figure out what they were actually doing. Yeah, we did experiments together, and it was like many things that we would see. Oh yeah, it's wrong, and then we spend the whole day there now, like, trying to help and mess them. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's tough, but yeah, no.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
really
it works out, but I'm resisting so far,
no,
to find
you're young, right? Like you could have the first one who is half passionate, and then we will approach and converge to the most passionate.
I know it's like I'll get pragmatic about it soon, I'm a little too romantic, when it comes to science. Yeah. So Matheus, what's on your plate? Like what interesting studies are you planning in the near future?
Well, basically, I've been doing like so. This is the nice thing about going to a sports science department, right? Like they really care about technique. They really care about you getting there, like as an expert. And that's the interesting thing, because then there are like many coordination changes that occur until you get there. So the nice thing then, what I'm doing currently is truly seeing the aspect of transfer, meaning what you practice in one condition has an influence in another. That like how does that develops over time? Because you have in the whole motor development literature that you need to learn how to do X, so then for you to learn Y later on. And the point is, first, there is no evidence, like there's no systematic evidence that you need to bounce a ball on your side for you to learn how to dribble in basketball. Like, well, nobody showed that you couldn't learn directly the dribbling. But so, and we've started doing those things, we're trying looking at it. And I've been looking always in terms of transfer, like, oh, what is that? There isn't the first task that is required for the second task. If you take a look in that, in the sense of actually, like if you consider this definition, this broad definition that I said about transfer, that relates to almost every applied profession related to movement. Right. Rehabilitation guys, physical therapists, they need to do something in their session that translates to other things, to transfer to many other things.
Right.
The point is, if we don't understand what is it that there is in one task that transfers to the others, we don't know what we're gonna do.
Right.
And so actually, like I'm going towards this direction that like, okay, we need to find out what it is that allows you to go to something bigger or something more complex, which then relates to motor development, motor learning. And the thing that I think puts everything together is that because I've been working with individuality a long time ago, it's you learn something that helps you learn something else. But because you learn different, like you and I learn different things from the same task, it could be then that actually this is what I could find the differences in transfer in terms of those structures that you learn. And that's what I'm doing. Actually, you discussed with me like that I'm doing some network things in the from my own papers. But the point was, the thing is, actually, I think I found like the route to understand these kind of transfer things through network analysis and stuff and blah, blah, blah. Not synergies per se, but like relational things that you can actually put together things. So this is basically where I'm going now, is like, I want to see this network idea actually has a better way of putting together coordination, how it occurs, and seeing like if this structure that I find in terms of a network actually predicts what you can learn in a new task or not. Yeah, that's where I'm going.
It's very interesting, and for the viewers, it's not easy to do as well, especially with an ecological task.
It is easy. It is easy. If you guys want to work with me, just come. It's quite easy. It's and always like, and I always work with search, right? Like search is the the thing that I never understood, and that's why I keep working on it. But it's
No, I'll put a link of your papers on search, especially the one which I participated myself. I think
obviously
one of the worst participants who actually deteriorated in performance instead of improving over time.
no, yeah. We have one with monkeys as well. That at that time, yeah, the monkeys paper that you had was actually one of the nicest. It's like you have like that adaptation they do in giving like the constraints.
Right.
And that was the nice thing about the paper. We weren't talking about like the principles of monkey mapping. No, it's like what the constraints do to actually their movement patterns.
Yeah, right. And how do they tackle those constraints?
Yeah.
And that itself had implications for evolutionary theory about the human tool making. Yeah.
No, so that was one that I enjoyed a lot doing.
Yeah.
And you appear in the lab every day, every single day.
I do remember. It would have been fun if you were around, actually. We would.
What?
It would have been fun if you were around here, or if I was around. Like discussion
I would
helps a
love
lot.
actually.
Yeah.
Actually, Omaha is like one of the nicest places I saw. Right, like when
Yeah.
I went to visit, it's really nice.
Yeah.
And I would love to go there. Now it's really hot in here.
Oh.
Kind of like really hot.
It's getting colder here now. Yeah.
Yeah, we were supposed to start getting colder, but it's not. But
right. So thanks, Matthew. I mean, very interesting conversation, and we really look forward to your future work and having you around in Omaha, in the University of Nebraska, at some point.
You just invite me, I'll go. Okay, I'm not that hard of a person to go.
Yeah.
You now have like you're full of money. So like, if anybody's
I am not. I'm not. Others are. The department is currently, but we need to really succeed with grants and stuff to maintain the luxury. But we hope soon we will.
I'm joking with you. I'm joking with you. Don't worry.
We'll have a plenary lecture from you, I hope, at some point.
No, I think so. Well, thanks for having me here. It's really nice to discuss these things. It's always nice to actually put out also like how it is the academic life for those who do not know, or those who are in their PhD. Well, you have now like a clear conversation on how it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice. Like it's nice to have this type of conversations again and see like an old friend like you. Not just because you're old, but because you're an old friend of mine.
I'm not old. In my early 30s. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's really good.
As for academic standards, we are like toddlers.
We are. That's for sure. But you're an older toddler than I am, so I can still call you old.
No, we are same age, man. we did a PhD together. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, nice to see you, man. Thanks again for having me here.
Yeah.
If someone wants to contact me, please do. You
definitely.
Guys are welcome.
Yeah, it would be a pleasure to work with Matheus. Definitely, I can attest. It would be a really successful graduate education.
Thanks for that as well. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Matheus. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.